Hello, this is Gabriel, and I'm back for the second part of coding Snake in an object-oriented manner using Pygame. Um, where we left off, we created a object of a snake that can move around in any direction in a display. It can also get longer, and then it can also collide with the boundaries. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, as you can see, if I increase the length, basically the snake can collide with itself and nothing happens. Although in the actual game, when the snake collides with itself, it's supposed to yeah, that's one of the end scenarios. So that's how you lose the game. So what I could do is I could create a function within here, within the game class, to determine whether the snake actually hit itself. However, I find that a much simpler way to do this, and it actually saves a lot of space encoding wise. Um, is to implement a function, or is to implement an if statement within the move variable here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a simple if statement. So first off, the snake, essentially snake head will. So okay, all right. If the snake head is in the snake list, then I want this function move to return false. However, essentially a snake head's always going to be in the snake list if it's only one snake length long. So I'm just going to create another if statement before this. Sorry, guys. Create if self.snake length is greater than 1. So what this does is that if this xy coordinate is already in the list, meaning then I want this move function to return false, and then what I can do here is that instead of doing just self.snake.move, I can do if this move function is equal to false, self.running equals false, and then Pygame.quit. And essentially, even though I'm doing an if statement here, it's still going to run self.snake.move because it has to run it to determine whether it's false or not. So this essentially just creates the normal game. The only difference is that if I get long and I hit myself, well, that was not very clear, but if I get very long, sorry, and then I just hit myself, the game ends. Sorry, probably not quit. Sorry, it's bugging out a little bit. Okay, so now we have it so that the snake can collide with itself, and it can collide with the boundaries, and it can move around. Now, we're actually gonna get into the next step of the game. We're gonna create our third class, so the class of Apple. Essentially, all I want with this class is all I wanted to do is just return a xy coordinate, okay? And this xy coordinate is not is within the display, and it's not. Well, okay, sorry. Just X out this. Let's see. This xy coordinate just for now I'm gonna do this. This xy coordinate is not taken up by any of the objects of the snake, and it's within the boundaries of the display. So I'm gonna create a class called Apple. That's the technical name of the snake is eating. Then within this class, all I want to do is just find a suitable area for the snake for the xy coordinates. So as with any class, I'm going to first create an initialize function, and the inputs I want are the screen width. So I want the xy coordinate to be within the screen width. I want the screen height. Then I also want the grid size, because based off the grid size, the xy coordinate has to be within the grid size, or within the grid, on one of the coordinates of the grid, because if the XY coordinate is on one of the coordinates of the grid, then there can actually be collisions between the snake and the snake, which moves only on the grid, and the apple, which is on the grid. So first, as with both other functions, I'm going to just create variables out of the inputs. So screen width equals screen width. Screen. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a preliminary XY coordinate for the apple, so that when the apple spawns, it will spawn at this preliminary XY coordinate. So what I'm going to do is self.x, so the x coordinate equals, and I'm going to use the function round, which is part of the, just built into Python. But I'm going to round a random value. So again, this random is actually using the module random. Sorry, where was I? Okay, here. So I'm going to do a random within the range, rand range. Now, as you can see, using this rand range, basically there's a start value, which is 0. There's a stop value, which is the right for the x coordinate. It'll be the screen width minus the grid size, and then and then that's all I kind of really want. So I'm gonna do 0 is the start, then screen width. Sorry, self. That's my bad. Self. That's screen width minus self grid size. Now, actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide it by self grid size, in order for it to what this is going to do is it's going to help with the rounding, so it's going to actually round it to a location on the grid. Then I'm going to re-multiply it by self grid size, because even though this put it back onto a position in the grid, it essentially shrink because it's dividing this value. It's shrinking the x value, so I want to re-increase the x value, and I'm going to re-increase it by the size of the grid size. Then I'm going to do the same thing with y, so I'm essentially just going to copy paste this, just change everything to y. So self.y, again, using the module, the function rand range, in the module random. Now instead of screen height for y, it's instead of screen width for y, it's screen height. And again, by dividing by the grid size, and because of the function round, by dividing by the grid size, you are placing this or y coordinate on the grid, and then however you place it on the grid, but it becomes much smaller, so you want to re-increase it by multiplying it again by grid size. Sorry, I think I might have I spelled screen width here wrong. Forgot the n. So what this is going to do is there's a preliminary xy coordinate based off this. Now the next thing that I'm going to actually, for now, I'll go ahead and I'll draw the apple just so it's more visual. I think that's one of the problems with my last videos. I would explain something, however, I didn't show it like in real time, so I'm gonna try to do that a little bit more. So I'm gonna create a function draw apple within the game class. And now what we need is we just need an apple. So yep. Then furthermore, just like I created an object or a variable of the object snake here, I'm going to create another variable of the object apple. So self object, the variable apple equals apple, again self screen width, and self screen height, and self grid size. Okay. So let's see. So here, we're at draw apple. So what I'm gonna do is at the XY coordinate, um, at this XY coordinate, I'm gonna draw another rectangle. This time I'm gonna color the rectangle green, um, because uh, yeah, it's just a different color from red. You can color anything you want. I just think that green is nice contrast. So I'm gonna use again the built-in Pygame function, pygame.draw.rect. Um, Now this function takes in a display, a color, x coordinate, y coordinate, and then length, and then width. So just like I did for the previous for the draw snake function, I'm gonna do self.display. So we're projecting this rectangle on display. Then we're gonna use the color green, and again at the very beginning, I put green here. Then the x coordinate will be the self.snake or self.apple.x, and self. Sorry, there's an indentation issue here. Bring it back one. Then self.apple.y, and then just you want the apple to be the same size as the grid. So I want the length and the width to be equivalent to the grid size. So okay. Now over here, I'm going to actually draw the apple. So let's see where I'll draw it before the snake, but I don't think it matters where you do it. Draw apple. Sorry, I spelt it wrong. Self.apple. Now if I start, as you can see here, I drew a green apple. However, even if I collide with it, nothing happens. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new function within this game class called apple collision. And what this function is going to do is it's going to take the position of the snake, it's going to take the position of the apple, and if the x position of the snake is equal to the x position of the apple, then it's going to add a segment. And if it adds a segment, it's going to increase the snake length by 1, then the snake will become longer. So this is pretty straightforward, this function. So all it's going to do is it's going to take from the snake, it's going to take if self.snake, if the position, the x coordinate of the snake equals self.apple.x, so if the x coordinate of the snake equals the x coordinate of the apple, and also again it has to be both x and y have to be the same in order to signal a collision. If snake self.snake.y equals self.apple.y. So if the x coordinate of the snake is equal to x coordinate of the apple, and the y coordinate of the snake is equal to the y coordinate of the apple, then I want this to return true. Then if not, else return false. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna implement in the game loop. I'm gonna implement if self.apple collision returns true, so equals true, then I want I want the snake to add segment, so self.snake.add segment. Now let's run this. And then let's run this. Sorry, no attribute. I think I spelled a here. I forgot an I, another typo. Classic. Let's see. Now let's run it again. Now, if as you can see here, every time the snake collides with the green apple, it gets longer. However, also as you can see, there's a problem because the apple is not moving in positions. It's just staying the same place. Therefore, I'm gonna have to implement in the class of the apple I'm gonna implement a function so that every single time um, it's called, the apple finds itself a new suitable location. So I'm gonna call this function new location. So sorry, or def new locus. Um, then this just requires self. Actually, no, it requires the same thing as the previous one. So does it? No, it doesn't. We'll actually get back to that. But basically, I'm gonna create a variable, a bad spawn. So when bad spawn is true, which is kind of the default, the function is gonna keep running. So while the bad spawn equals true, while the XY coordinate is not in a good position, I want to find a new XY coordinate. So I'm gonna just copy paste this code. So so while the spawn is bad, I want to find a new XY. And then let's see, and then once it finds this this new position, I want the bad spawn to become false because it found a new position. However, what I'm gonna go back is I'm gonna go back into it and I'm gonna create another for loop. So for position and snake dot actually the one input that I want in this new location is a snake. So because you want to know the positions of the snake so that you can find a position so that you can find a locus that's kind of avoiding the parts of the snake. So for position, so for each position in snake, the snake list. So what this for loop is gonna do is it's gonna look it's gonna look at each position, each XY coordinate in the snake list, and then if if the X coordinate, so the position 0, equals the X of the apple, and the Y coordinate, so position 1, because again it's XY coordinate, equals self Y. So then I want bad spawn to be true. Then I want this this while loop to break if or I want this for loop to break if that happens. Then else bad spawn equals false. So what this is going to do is that for each, it's going to take each XY coordinate in the snake list, then it's going to look at the X and Y coordinates of the random X and Y coordinate of the apple, and it's going to say if the X coordinate matches the X coordinate in the snake list and the Y coordinate matches the coordinate in the snake list, then I want to keep this bad spawn to be true, so that it finds a new X and Y coordinate. Now I'm actually gonna go back into the game loop and I'm gonna implement this into the game loop in the draw apple section or here. So in the apple collision. So if the apple collision is true, I want to find I want the apple to find a new location, avoiding the snake. So now, if I run this, hopefully it works. As you can see here, every time I collide with the apple, it finds a new location. It's random. There's no sense to it. and then that's very important. It creates a foundation of the game. So now, truthfully, uh, if you want to, you can end here because technically you have created the game Snake. As you can see here, the you've created a game where a snake can keep getting longer every time it collides with an apple, and there's various end game scenarios where snake collides with the boundaries or it collides with itself. The game ends. However, I'm not gonna stop here. I'm gonna keep coding, and I'm gonna create a start screen and an end screen. What this does is it actually like gamifies it. It makes it nice, and it means that you can just keep playing the game instead of having to like rerun the program every time. So actually, first I'm actually just gonna delete this hack I did for space. But okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna do to help with this is I'm gonna create a message function. So this message function is very important because you can project words and you can print stuff on the screen. So and obviously with a start screen or end screen, you want to be able to say something. So in this message function, it's located within the game object. What I want is first I want a message, so I want to actually write a text. Then I need the x and y coordinates of the message. So basically, this is honestly I would just copy paste this code if you're actually doing it yourself, because there's no real sense or reason, or it's just like essentially it's always the same, and it's just using the Pygame built-in stuff, like built-in functions. So first you want to kind of create a font. So you want your font, or you want to set your font. So your font is equal to Pygame the font dot font. So what this is saying is the font here is equal to this, and then for my font I'm going to be using free sans bold. Then the .ttf is like the file location for the font. Then the font size is 32. So as you can see here, if you look at the description of the font, sorry, let me see if I can get it back up again. I might not be able to. Here, as you can see here, this font function in Pygame takes in a file, so the file of the font, and the size. So the font is free sans bold. I spelled this wrong. A size 32, and then the text. Then I want to create a text. So I'll create a variable called text equals the font. So it renders a font, and then as you can see here, sorry, basically what this render function does, which is another built-in function, it takes a text, like a anti-alias, which is just true, like if it's true or false, whether the function exists or not, a color and a background. So I'm gonna I don't know what I just said. So I'm gonna take the message. The message is the text. The message from the function itself. True, because you want the thing to be true. And then the color, for my color for this message, I'm gonna be using green. So for all my messages, I'm gonna be using the color green. And then you have to create a rectangle where this font goes. So or where this message goes. So imagine you have your display, like here. I'll pause this for a second just to show you. So you have your, I don't know what I just did. How's this not right? Okay. You have your display. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a kind of like a fake rectangle on top of this display. Then on that rectangle, I'm going to be projecting the text, the message. So sorry, let me just delete these. So what I'm going to do here is call text rectangle. So rectangle of the text. then equals self dot text dot get rect x or get rect. Get rect is a built-in function again for Pygame, I believe. I'm not actually no, just a built-in function in general for Python or for yeah, for Python, and it just I don't know, just gets a rectangle. Or it gets XY coordinates for a rectangle. The input is XY coordinates for a rectangle. Then I'm gonna center the text, the rectangle. Or actually no, sorry. The get rect creates a rectangle. I'm sorry. Dot center. Now what this is gonna be doing is it's gonna center a rectangle at the x and y coordinates that we want them to. Then finally, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this is built in Pygame. We're gonna use the blit function. What the blit function does is what this does is it creates a surface, a rectangular surface with the text on it. The blit projects the surface onto the display. So what this is going to be doing is it's going to take the text and the rectangle that the text is located on, the imaginary rectangle. It's not like colored or anything, and it's going to project that onto the display. So now we have this function for message, and now we can write anything you want. Just as an example, I'm gonna delete it in a second, but I could do here self.message. I could write testing, then 300, and if I run this, well, oh, sorry, I have to do. Then I have to update the screen after. I'll have to run this. Oh, you saw a flash over here, essentially a message flash. The reason why it's not lasting is because of the loop that's in. So essentially, now what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna create a pregame and endgame screen using this this message function. And yeah, so the first thing I'm gonna be doing is a pregame screen. So I'll create. Sorry, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create variables endgame and pregame. And in the initialize function for the game. So at the beginning of the game, when you first initialize this program, you want the endgame to be false because the game is not over. And then you want self.pregame to be true because the game is not started yet, so the pregame is still like gonna happen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna create. So for the game starts off right, and the self running is true. Normally, so far what we have is that if it just goes straight into the game loop and the game is happening. However, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to create two new loops for endgame and pregame, so that if pregame is true, then the game loop is going to start. If pregame and if endgame is true, then there's different things that can happen. So if pregame equals true, then I want to create another while loop. So while I spelled something wrong. That's here. So what this does is it says that so the game starts, the game loop begins. And the computer it looks first if pregame is true. Now, based off the initialize function, pregame is true. So it goes into a loop with while, it goes into a loop. Now, essentially, the reason why you need a loop is that if you don't have the loop, then it'll just run whatever you're running and straight away in 0.15 of a second, snake speed, it's just gonna go on to the game. So you want to loop so that whatever you display stays there until something changes and you go on to the next part of your code. So while the pregame is true, what I want is first I'm gonna create a different I'm gonna fill the display a different color. So um, I want the display to be white. Next, I want to write a message. So my pregame message is going to be let's say welcome. Sorry. Keep in mind also the message is a string, so you have to actually write it as a string inside the function. So welcome to Snake exclamation point, press P to play. Now I want this message at the middle of the screen. So the way I'm gonna do this, so it always stays at the middle, is I'm gonna do the x coordinate is self.screen width over 2. The y coordinate is self.screen height over 2. And then what I have to do is I have to do pygame.display.update so that the display actually shows a white screen with a message on it. Now, if I run it, as you can see here, there's just a screen, doesn't do anything. Welcome to Snake, press P to play. Now, the reason why the game is crashing right now is because there's no way for it to end, and it just kind of stays here, nothing's changing. So the way I'm going to help with this is I'm going to use another for loop. So for event in pygame.event.get. So again, I'm going to have the program look for events that are happening. And as I said here, press P to play. So I'm going to look for key down. If the key is equal to P, then I want the game to start. So if event.type equals pygame, that if the key is down, and that key, and if event dot key equals pygame, and if the label of that key is P, then I want the pregame to equal false, meaning the loop gets cut and it goes on to the actual game. So also, if you're trying to code something from home, I definitely should have mentioned this earlier, but if you want to change the identifier, if you want to change what key does what, so if you want to change from like right, left, up, down arrows to WASD, I just recommend looking up in the Pygame. There's a Pygame website, and they have all the key identifiers and all of that, and it's all nice laid out. So if the key is P, then this while loop gets cut, and it goes on to the actual game. So let's try this out. As we can see here, there's a start screen. Now I press the key P, and now the game starts, and now I can keep playing until I die, and the game closes. Now the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an end game scenario. So it's going to look, it's going to say if end game equals true, I want to again display a screen with a message on it, and this time with the end game, I want to either have a screen where the user can quit or he can play, or sorry, the user can quit or they can play again. So I'm gonna use the same method as the game loop, and I'm gonna create another while loop. So while self.endgame equals true, I want the display again to be white. I want to display a message. Let's see. You lost. Press, let's say P to play again, or Q to quit. Period. Then I want to put this again in the middle of the screen, so self screen width, where 2 is the x coordinate and self screen height. 2 is the y coordinate. Then again, I want to update the screen, so Pygame update. And again, basically, if I run this, if the end game is true, it's just gonna crash because there's a while loop, but nothing's happening. It's just like it's not looking for anything. So again, I'm gonna have to create an event, and I want the events P or Q. Those are the 2 events I want. So for that in pygame.event.get, P and Q's are keys, so the event type is a key down. If if the key is P, what I want to do is I want to rerun the whole program. So I want this function here to just completely restart. Actually, wait 1 sec. I think you can actually you want if P is pressed and you want to play again, you want this main game loop here to just be rerun as a whole, and it will restart the game. Else, if the event, sorry, I spelled key wrong. Also, this should be fine. Sorry, if event key 2 equal signs. Sorry. If the event key is equal to Q, so pygame.k.q, then I want to shut off the game. So self.running equals false, and pygame.quit. Now, basically, previously my collisions, I just have them quit straight away. However, now that I've implemented an endgame, I want to have it so that if the snake collides with itself, it makes the endgame equal to true, and this loop happens. So at the moment, even though I wrote all of that, if I start the game and I collide with something, it's just gonna shut off the screen instead of going to the endgame. So what I'm gonna do is instead of having the Pygame quit here, I'm gonna write self.endgame equals true. So I'm gonna make it so that if the snake collides with itself here, or if the snake collides with the boundaries, the endgame is true, and then it moves on to this loop here. So now, if I start the game, I press P in the starting page, I can play. Let's see, sorry, oh, apologies, I wrote a typo, right here. Now, let me restart. So press P to play. I just playing. I collide. Now I get taken to the end screen. You lost. Press P to play again, or Q to quit. I press P to play again. It takes me back to the beginning of the game. P to play again, and then there, and then I can play again. Then again, or Q to quit. Press Q, and the game shuts off. So essentially, now what I've done is create the end game, and now we're very close to being done. The only thing I want left is I want a score to be shown. So the way I envision it is having a score in the top left corner of the screen, and then I want at the very end, in the end game, I want to project the score. So you can do the scoring in any way you want. However, the way I view the scores is for each value in snake length. So the score is essentially the length of the snake. As the snake gets longer, the score goes up. So for this, I'm just going to create a simple counter function. Def score. Here I'm going to do this counter starts at 0. And for there's so many ways to do a counter. However, the way I'm doing it is just using a for loop. So for each value in the range of self.snake length. So for each value of snake length, I want the counter to plus equal to increase by 1. Then I want this value to return counter. Now, what the score function just does, it just takes the snake length here, and it creates a new value for a counter, and it just returns a score. Now I want to implement the score in the actual in the game loop. Sorry. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna make a new variable for the score. You have to make a new variable, or else it's like a what's it called, like a scope problem, I think. So I want the score. I'm gonna get a variable called print score. Now I'm using the string command to make this score that comes here a string, because essentially the message which I'm going to be using to project the score onto the screen only takes in strings here. So I need this score to be a string. So string self.score. So now I created a variable called print score that takes the score here, or a score found using the score function, and yeah, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just print this. I'm going to put a message for the print score, so I can actually just put it on the screen. So self.print score, and based off the font, because it's a size 32, I'm going to put it in the top left, but I'm not going to put 0, 0. I'm going to put 32, 32, so that it's not like too far, so it's like more aesthetically pleasing. However, you can put, if you want to put this in the bottom right, you can put it at the bottom right of your screen if you want. I don't think it matters very much. So now if I go here, you can see there's a score in the corner, top left corner, and every time I collide with something, the score increases. Okay, so now all left to do is in the end game, I want to print the score. So I'm just going to create a message for this. So below, this message kind of shows up in the middle of the screen, because it's screen width divided by 2 and screen height divided by 2. I'm just going to create another message below this where it just prints the same thing, or where it prints the score. So let's see. So self dot message. Actually, what I'm gonna do for this, sorry. Basically, how I would probably do it would be you don't have to do it this way, but the way I would do it, so that it's better. Because the window width and window height can be chosen to be whatever you want. You want everything to kind of be based off the window width and window height rather than specific XY coordinates. Like, even though here I use specific XY coordinates, 32, 32, that's bad practice, and it's better that you base everything on screen width and screen height. So what I'm going to do there is, therefore, I'm going to create a new variable called score message, and I'm going to make this into a string. I'm going to concatenate, I guess, two strings, so the print score and a message, so your final score was, and then column that print score, self.print score. Sorry. So I'm gonna concatenate these two messages here, and then I'm gonna actually display the message. So self.message. And I'm gonna put this a one row below the welcome, or sorry, I'm sorry, I'm doing this in the pregame area. Sorry, I have to move this and just copy paste this into the endgame. I apologize for that. So what this is gonna do is I'm just gonna display this message below this message here. You lost. Press P to play again, or Q to quit. So what I'm gonna do, the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna have it again be in the middle of the screen. So I'm gonna use screen width over 2 as the x coordinate. Also, I'll just mention this. The reason why I'm able to do screen width over 2, and what you would think happens when you do a, sorry, let me just pause this real quick. Sorry, I just want to show you something quickly. So what you would expect when I use screen width over 2 is that the rectangle starts, or the text starts at the middle, then moves to the right. However, basically, sorry, the game is, because I removed this endgame, made it so that you can't collide or quit the game, but basically because I put the center, the text center command in the message itself, it means that the message is going to auto fix itself, so that the middle of the message is at the middle of the message is at the x value, and the middle of the message is at the y value. If I took away the center and just put x, y here, then it would, the leftmost part of the message would be at the middle, and then the rightmost, it would just keep going right from there. But if that makes any sense. But so now for the last thing that I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna display the message, the score, in the endgame screen. So I'm gonna have it be at the middle of the screen, and then I want it to be below this message here. Therefore, I'm gonna be doing screen height. Sorry, screen height over 2, and then I want this to be, let's say, 64 pixels below, so that it looks nice and clean. So now, sorry, unsure. Oh. No. Not really sure where my error is here. Oh, sorry. I have to put a plus because you're adding this print score at the end of this. Now if I play the game quickly, my final. Oh, this is a learning experience. As you can see here, the score message was actually printed above the other endgame message. The reason why is because I did minus, and again, because the way displays work in Pygame, zeros here, and like 600 zeros here. So the x and y coordinates increase as you go down and right, and therefore, in order to make my text be below, it have to be underneath. So shut the game. So here, actually, I'm just gonna actually put this in parentheses. Um, this should actually print it below. Sorry, forgot parentheses. Um, yeah. So now you can see that the final score is printed below the message to play again or quit. So I'm gonna quit the game. Now, this is it. This is how you code Snake with like endgame and pregame screens using the module Pygame in an object-oriented manner. Um, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's a little bit long. However, if you follow my code exactly, you'll be able to create a very workable, very good version of Snake. And although there are some adjustments you can make, this is I'm quite content with my work here, and it's also a very good exercise in teaching you how to program in an object-oriented manner, which is crucial for any type of game design or any kind of or just coding in general. It's very helpful. So anyway, thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you.